Hey everyone. So, welcome to the webinar today, and I hope everyone is doing well. And today's webinar session is going to be on alarming threats in unified communication. And myself, Ramesh Raja, and I'm a product manager at CONTUS. So, who's CONTUS? CONTUS is a product and solution company. So, we have multiple products, and like we have MirrorFly and vPlate. So MirrorFly is a communication solution, a chat and call solution, and vPlay is a OTT solution. So Qantas is there in IT industry for a long time, more than a decade, and we have been doing this products more than 5 years. And I have been working with Qantas for past 5 years, and I have been handling MirrorFly team, the product team, and so let's get on to the topic today's topic, and it's going to be alarming threats in unified communication. So the agenda of this meeting is like we're going to be discussing about what is unified communication, and then how this unified communication has started, how it evolved, and then the pillars or maybe the features of unified communication. And then we will be discussing about what are the threats that are there when it comes to unified communication. And then we'll be discussing about what kind of security measures that we can take to avoid those kind of threats and secure your infrastructure or maybe your application or your user. And then we'll be discussing about how we can set up a workflow on the same security measures that you have gonna take. Okay, and then we'll be taking about what is integrated or how Mirrorfly has integrated these security measures and um, how they followed all these. We have followed all these security standards to make sure it matches industrial standard. And then we'll be discussing about what all industries Mirrorfly has been like delivered the solution and what kind of security measures has been taken. And then we'll have a Q&A session. Yeah. So we'll discuss first about the unified communication. So what is unified communication? So unified communication is nothing but uh, like having different kind of communication. So RTCs, real-time communications like chat, video, audio conferencing, so instant messaging, emails. So these are all comes under and SIP calls. Yeah. So these are all comes under unified communication. So all these features clubbed together and having it in a single application is called as a unified communication. So that you know that most of the organizations is acting 100% or maybe 50% work from home, and most of them are planning to have 100 going for 100% work from home. So if you have a right device and internet connectivity, you can connect with anyone in the world right now. Yeah. So that's where this unified communication become more popular, and so that you should allow your employee or maybe your client to reach you at any point of time through any kind of device. So everything under one roof is called unified solution. Yeah. And the popularity of unified communication has started by 1990s. Yeah. And there are different types of real-time and non-real-time communications are there. Yeah, we will talk about them in later slides. So as a there is a research, and the research has proven that in globally the unified communication market is projected that it grow up to $48 billion by 2023. So it is a huge opportunity for most of us to move towards unified communication. Yeah. So when we discussed about unified communication, what is unified communication, and now we will talk about how unified communication has started or how it evolved. So by 1800s, so there were we had telegraph. Yeah, telegraph was the only communication tool to connect with other end user. Yeah. And then by after that we didn't had there were no communication tool, and by 1960s, yeah, the PBX or telephone network has been introduced. Then by 1980s, the voicemail system has become an evident. So people were like, if they couldn't able to connect with them, they drop a voice email so that they can respond back to them. And by 1990s, the IP telephony, like VoIP calls, has been introduced, and I think that's the breaking point where unified communication has emerged much in larger scale. Yeah, and then in 2000, yeah, then you see like unified communication has popular across every individual, because every products and every solution or every application that you use had their own chat or maybe voice or text or email system. So that is how it evolved. And what are pillars or maybe the features of unified communication? So, like as we discussed, like there are few items like chat or instant message, chat in the sense instant messaging, and group calls or maybe one-to-one peer calls, or it can be SIP calls. So there are a lot of other things like when it comes to other thing, the pillars like call controls, multimodal communications, and the user presence, whether the user is online or offline, or when he went offline, and instant messaging and unified messaging, like when on a click of a button, I should be able to transfer these to a different device, and I keep messaging or maybe keep continuing the call, and the speech access and personal assistance through chatbots or something like that, and then conferencing can be audio or video or through even the webinar, and collaboration tools. So we can take whiteboards, a lot of other tools are there. And the mobility, as I said, like on a single click, I should be able to transfer it from my desktop to mobile or maybe to tablets. And so the like business process integrations and software enabled BPIs, all these comes under the pillars of unified communication. So with these features, we can call them like clubbing together, we can call them as unified communication. Now let's jump on to the main topic, like what are the threats that are there in unified communication. Yeah. So there are a lot of threats like security or vulnerabilities when it comes to a solution. So it can be on different stages. Yeah. So it can be on user level, or next will be the application level, and it will be on virtual infra level, and then physical infra level. So these are the different levels of security threats are there in a UC. Yeah. So we'll call unified communication a UC from now on, so it will be easier for us. So uh, so first thing, like, which will be denial of services. I guess most of you would heard of it, or it can be simply it will be called as DOS or DDoS. So DDoS is nothing but distributed denial of services. So what it does is, like, what people used to do is, like, they will flood your network or maybe your application. They make fake calls or make fake messages, send you flood your system with a lot of requests. So by doing this, what happens is, like, they will try to bring your system down. So that is one thing. That's one kind of a threat. And the other one will next one is like theft of service. So in some case, or if your system is not secure, they can able to access your authorization or your keys or your tokens, and then they can make use of your server if your server is not properly secure. If they can able to take you access of your system, they can able to use it illegally. They can send messages from your system, and they can able to make calls from your system, yeah, scam calls. So this can happen, yeah. Or they can bring your system down by doing this. And using hacking tools, yeah, like they will be able to hack into your system, like doing middleman attack, or like hacking into your system directly, and hacking in your VoIP service, and they can able to barge your calls. They can do any these kind of stuff using hacking tools. These are all mostly on the physical physical level, infra level, and or the virtual infra level, or in the application level. And the next part, like mobile threats and legitimate access, this comes under the client side, or on the mobile side, or on the desktop side. So these are like accessing the user's device, or they can take root access, and they can able to um, and understand, or do a reverse engineering on your code, and take user and device access, and they can able to send message or maybe send make calls These kind of factors can be taken. And then the next level will be legitimate access, like breaking into insecure application, and the application does not have a two-factor authentication, or not having a proper authentication. They can break into the system, and then they can make calls, or maybe they can send messages, or they can do whatever stuff they want, or they may collect user information from that. So these kind of things can happen. Yeah. So there are a lot of threats or security or vulnerability issues in your application. Yeah. So this can happen into your system. Like, it can be unified communication, or it can be any solution. This can happen to you. Yeah. So we should avoid these kind of problems. So in next slides, we'll discuss about what kind of solution we can take to avoid these kind of security threats in your application. Yeah. So team is going to initiate a poll. Yeah, we have a poll. So like, I will give you 2 minutes, so you can answer those questions in the poll. Yeah, you can answer to the poll. So it will be on related to what kind of security measure that you wanted to take in your application on a unified communication application. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. So this one will like help us in understanding what kind of solution or maybe measure uh, we can take to avoid these kind of threats, or avoid these kind of vulnerabilities in your application, or maybe on your server, on a unified communication platform. So first thing is security plan. So whenever you start something, you should have a proper plan. So when it comes to security, you definitely have to plan to create a fail-proof security plan and mitigate that risk, whether it is on server software side, or on the hardware side. Yeah. That has to be done properly. So as I said, like, there are a lot of levels of security that we have to take on different levels of application layer. So the basic or the first level of thing that security that we have to take is like enabling the default encryption in all the places. Yeah. So if it is a database, or maybe media, that by default every system will have their default encryption. We have to enable it. And then the next thing is like doing an application level encryption. Yeah. So there are and also on the hardware level encryptions are there. So like, I have given few examples here. Like, we can see that we have IPsec, SSH, TLS, SSL, SRTP, AES, and HTTPS, and hashing protocols to make sure your data is encrypted, or maybe it is not readable by human, or even by the a robot, to like decrypt it and see what is inside. Maybe this will help them to understand what is inside, what kind of message is being transferred, or what they are talking about, or steal the user information and publish it in public network. So we can avoid them by encrypting your data. And the next thing is like on the hardware level, or like doing having a firewall. So why we need to have a firewall? Firewall is like, we have been talking about DDoS and DDoS, right? So, and also there are something like cross scripting. So where, like, from web end, they can do like they can do injections and cross scripting. So to avoid these kind of problems, we should have a firewall. So or, and even you can have a enterprise session border controls. Yeah. So these are kind of measures can be taken to avoid like getting into your system. Yeah. Maybe flooding of unnecessary message, or drinking down your system. These kind of problems can be solved by having a proper firewall. Yeah. And then how we can avoid unauthorized or unauthenticated user entry. So this can be done by having a proper role-based this role-based access control is different from authentication and authorization. Yeah. So like what we do is like like if it is a super admin, he has a separate area of access, and if it is an admin, he has separate area of access. So you should define the roles of each user. It can be done on the application level, or and other on the cloud level as well, cloud or on-premise, wherever it is. So you should have a role-based access control. As I said, like it should be on application level and it should be on the server level as well. So you should have you should give write access to few users, whomever just need write access, and read access and delete access has to be um, based on your roles. So this has to be definitely followed, and as I said, it has to be done on all the levels. And securing remote teams, yeah. So like how we can like we can define roles, yeah, but how we can make sure that no one has access to the system apart from our team, yeah. So because this is like most of them, as I said, like we have been doing 100% or maybe 50% work from home. Our team is in like geographically in different locations. So and also they are doing work from their home and their location. So how we can avoid that? So we can have VPNs or cloud-based collaborations to make sure that only from this particular system, or maybe from the infra, we can access our system. We can do that so that we can have avoid a lot of problems. So this can be done. So we can secure the remote teams. Yeah. And the next thing is like it's on the call monitoring. Yeah. So call monitoring is for mostly for SIP calls or maybe for the VoIP calls. So this is to avoid making spam calls and reporting fraudulence, yeah, and detecting if there is any unusual activity happening. So it's not just call monitoring. We can have monitoring for the whole system, even for the messaging. So definitely there should be alerting and monitoring system in place, and it should alert and log the information and monitor the information. Yeah. So what should happen is like it should keep on logging the data, like user access, or maybe whatever errors that just keep happening, it should be logged, and then should monitor the performance of the system, and the information like data. It has to collect the data, how many messages or how many calls is going on, and based on your previous or maybe daily data, it has to do calculation, and if there is any uh, miscellaneous action or maybe spam callings happening, it should report, and you should like there should be manual operation to understand what is happening, and you should take a measure with respect to that. And complete authentication, yeah, as I said, like earlier, so user should authenticated and authorized, and you should have user-based authentication, user level authentication should be there on every entry point, yeah. So like even if it is on the client side, if it is on the mobile or in the web, wherever there is an entry point for the user, wherever we get input from the user, there should be an authentication. Yeah. And what are other things can be done is like compliances in privacy policies. So there are a lot of privacy policies and government compliances out there, like GDPR, HIPAA compliance. So these compliance can be followed to avoid problems, or maybe we can secure the system by having a proper system in place. And the most important thing and last thing is like have the system updated. So even if it is an application or on the or a bare metal or on the server, it has to be kept updated, because there are a lot of issues or vulnerabilities or maybe trojans will come frequently. So every manufacturer will release an update for that particular security or vulnerability issues. So we have to keep our software or maybe application and OS updated to keep to avoid these kind of problems. So to give an example, in Java, like on December, there was log4j issue has been reported. Like if it was log4j was mostly or widely used logging tool to log issues. Sorry, to see the logs from the system. So if you have used log4j, anyone can get into your system and then they can able to do anything. Yeah, that's what the problem was. So there was two steps. They have provided an update, and it was fixed by a patch. So which means like we have to keep the system updated. We have to see and we have to read a lot of blogs and see what is happening in the market, if there is any kind of a vulnerability, whether our system is vulnerable to that, and we have to provide a proper solution for that. Yeah. So next slide, this slide, we will be discussing about what kind of workflow or how we can like keep this updated, or we can integrate security on our system. Yeah. So first thing is, like as I said, like on the previous slide, we have to definitely integrate all these security steps or security procedures to make your system protected. And then, so once after doing that, you should not be you should not leave it there. So you should uh, keep monitoring your system. Yeah. So we have monitoring system in tool. So we should spot recurring threats and concerns on your unified communication. Yeah. And then based on it, you have to develop a secure and collaborative landscape. Yeah. Landscape, nothing but this, like this architecture, or maybe the server level, or maybe the OS level architecture. You have to make it strong. And then if there is any user level issue, then you have to demand an authentication from the user. And if required, you can use session-based control, or maybe integrate encryption. Yeah. And the next thing is, like if there is any changes in the compliances, or maybe you can add a new compliance to your system to make it secure. Yeah. So now we have in previous slides so far we have discussed about what kind of security, what is unified communication, and what kind of security issues on threads are there for a unified communication. Now we'll see what kind of shatterproof security standards is being integrated or followed in MirrorFly to make sure it is 100% secured and it is not vulnerable to any kind of threat. So first thing is, like we have integrated end-to-end encryption. Yeah. So uh, so we have integrated end-to-end encryption on calls, chats, so on, and every user in entries that has been taken. Yeah. So even if it is a text message, what we do is, like we do two different types of encryption. We will talk about those kind of encryptions in next slide. So what kind of encryption that we have been following? So we do encryption for messages, and we do encrypt the media that has been sent from the client. And also what we do is, like we enable the default encryption on the media storage, so to make sure it is kept safe. And then the calls, yeah, we follow DTLS and SRTP encryption to make sure the calls, the media that been sent for the calls is being encrypted. And we follow ZRTP for SIP calls. Yeah. So these are all the encryption, end-to-end encryption methods that we have been following. And the compliances, yeah, MirrorFly is compatible with HIPAA and GDPR compliance. Yeah. So next, we will talk about the encryption. As I said, like we have been following two different types of encryption based on the user expertise. Expectation. Yeah. So we have been doing end-to-end encryption using AES 256. So we follow AES 256 basic encryption. We transfer public and private keys, and then we encrypt the data. So we follow this a basic AES encryption for customers who require a different kind of customization. They want to see the messages, or they wanted to see what is going on in the channel. So for those clients, we do follow AES 256 encryption. And customer who doesn't want to see any messages, or they wanted to have a proper encryption, like if it is kind of a stronger encryption they want, we follow signal protocol. Yeah. Signal protocol is widely used across Skype, WhatsApp, every IM which actually has a stronger encryption, which actually uses signal protocol. And then token-based authentication. Yeah, as I said, like every user entry point, we do token-based authentication, and we also enabled two-factor authentication. So like user will be verified by OTP and then username password to make sure they are authenticated 100%. And like secured infrastructure, next one is secured infrastructure. As I said, like we keep updating our system, like we keep all the patches updated. We on the application side also we keep updating or giving patches to make sure it is secure and there is no vulnerability or issues. And also we implemented proper firewall to make sure there is no issues on that side too. So we follow WAF to for the firewall for the web sites and to avoid DOS and DDoS attacks. So next thing is like what all areas MirrorFly UC SDKs and APIs has been used. So it's been used vastly. We have few examples here. We have been delivering our solutions to telehealth, e-learning, social forums, and financial sectors and remote call centers. So these are few examples. Apart from these, we have been delivering our solutions to defense, where we follow these encryption, or we have even developed a application that suits for specific OS. We have even worked on the OS level of the Android application to make sure it is not vulnerable, that there is no watered application, and we have even removed the Google service. We deployed one notification service for that. And this is how we develop or we work for a customer who actually has a customized requirement, and we deliver a secured solution. So, and we run security and vulnerability test often to see whether is there any vulnerability on our system. So when it comes to telehealth, yes, as I said, like the user information or the patient information has to be kept secure and be recorded every time. So when I say recorded, it has to be stored in in a place, and it should not be accessed by anyone without proper access. So we should imply all these kind of security steps that we have discussed earlier. And also we should follow compliances like HIPAA to make sure it actually matches the government norms. Yeah. And then e-learning, I think you probably know, like it would be a teacher-student communication, where we don't want our content to be exposed and it shouldn't be used across. So we can apply security measures there. And social forum, yeah, like mostly, like I can give examples, like we have delivered to world's leading telecom providers, where they have been using our solution within their application. So where we wanted to have a basic encryption or maybe the stronger encryption based on their requirement, and all these basic structure of encryption has to be followed there. And financial sector, yeah, definitely that should be each and every nook and corner has to be tested and should be like has to be penetrated, and to make sure it is secure and it is not vulnerable to any user inputs. Yeah, so that's where like we have to integrate all these like industrial leading security measures. And call centers, yeah, as I said, like SIP calls, we should authenticate the user, and we should monitor it like every time to make sure there is no spam call or flooding into the system. So these are all different or a few examples of industries that MirrorFly is providing a secure API and SDK for the unified communication solution. Yeah. So that's all for the webinar. Yeah. So we have covered most of the security risks that are there in unified communication, and how we can avoid such kind of security threats in your application, and what MirrorFly is doing in such areas. So now let's jump on to the Q&A. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can definitely post it in the Q&A session. I'm really happy to answer those questions. Okay, we got our first question. Yeah. So the question is like, what is the difference between VoIP and UCS? Okay. So VoIP is voice over protocol. Yeah. So which is nothing but earlier it used to go through PSTN. PSTN is nothing but the GSM call that we used to make. So VoIP is like making calls over internet protocol. So when internet came, the voice, the calls which have been making, which actually gone through IP, so which is called voice over IP, and which primarily has voice calling and audio conferencing. Even like now we have um, video is also brought into that particular area. Even though like VoIP is a part of the users, not all VoIP system will offer unified communication. Okay, and the next question is like how long it takes to integrate MirrorFly chat API or the SDK. The integration of MirrorFly solution, it depends on the requirement and the customization. Yeah. But basically, we deliver the system or the SDK as soon as the system is being purchased. Um, so what type of encryption? Next question is like what type of encryption type used in CONTUS MirrorFly? Okay, so I think we have covered in few slides. Yeah, so MirrorFly use different types of encryption. So for chat, we have been using AES 256 and um, signal protocol encryption. Yeah, so we have been following Diffie-Hellman and double ratchet algorithms and like um, the keys, public keys and private keys, and like exchanging key mechanism. Everything has been implemented to make sure it is safe and it is properly a proper end-to-end encrypted solution. So that, which means like if you're sending a message from your end and like when it reaches the other end, then only it can be decrypted, and it will be decrypted only by the other end user, not by anyone, and can be decrypted only once, and the key will be like the key will get regenerated or keep refreshing every time when you are sending a new message or receiving a new message. So that is how the signal protocol or the encryption works. So that has been implemented on MirrorFly's chat. And for the calls, as I said, like for SIP calls and WebRTC calls, we have been using uh, SRTP, DTLS, and ZRTP encryption protocols. Okay. So the next question is like, what is presence in unified communication? Yeah. So presence is like to know whether the user is offline or online, and even it is improved now. Like he can able to see what time have, he or she went offline. So that is called presence, to know whether whether the particular user is online or offline. The next question is like, how can a smaller company um, start to take advantage of unified communication? Yeah. Um, there is no just one vision of unified communication. Yeah, as I said, like unified communication is like having or bringing in all these kind of features like instant messaging and calls and allowing user to switch between devices instantly. So these all on SIP calls are brought together as a unified communication. Yeah. So like they can start by bringing in or maybe integrating solutions like MirrorFly within their application. Yeah. Uh, like maybe they can start with instant messaging, and then they can bring in calls, and then they can bring in SIP calls. So by doing this, they can make sure, or they can allow their users, or maybe their employees to reach other employee easily, yeah, with ease. So we have one more question, like, with migration process, want to know, is there any special migration API, or is there anything? Okay. Yes, like, if you wanted to integrate MirrorFly and have already used other chat API, definitely MirrorFly is helping, providing a special API to migrate the data. And what it does is, like, it will, as I said, like, it encrypts the data and stores in the database. You can make use of it, and you can retrieve the data like when you are migrating from one solution to other solution. You can able to handle your users. They will not see any changes in the migration. Delivering the solution for a lot of customers around the globe. Yeah. So on security point, and as well as in the functional point, we are 100% customizable. We are ready to customize it, and it is made in a such a way, or developed in a such a way, uh, it is ready to accept any kind of customization. I think yeah, final question. Yeah, we have got is so is it a replacement of any existing UC solution? Yeah, like, I would say, like, there are a lot of UC solutions. Yeah, you can definitely, or it is a replacement for existing UC solution. You can definitely make MirrorFly or use MirrorFly as a replacement. I can give names like Twilio, Zenbird. So these are a few examples. Okay, so the next question is, like, how is the licensing goes here? So licensing, we like, it is there are two different types of licensing. Yeah, and I think I'm not the right person. So the next slide, I will drop the email. Yeah, I'll be showing the email address for the business development team. You can definitely contact the business development team to answer those questions, or maybe you can reach them out, and they will definitely set up a call with the solution team and the business development team, and they will really help you in understanding the licensing, how the licensing model works, and what are different types of licensing model available. Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar, and like, spending such a time in learning, or maybe understanding a few areas. And you can drop an email to bd@context.in if you have more queries related to the solution, and whatever you have, you can drop an email, and we are really happy to connect, or maybe we can reply to your queries. So thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining the call.